Hey guys, it's Rodney, and for today's plant rant, we are going to be potting up a staghorn fern. So, as you guys might know from our garden tours, we've got a large, I think in a 30-inch hanging basket or 34-inch hanging basket, something. I'll have to measure it one day. But it's about 18 years old now, and it started as just a small baby like this guy. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take this 4-inch here, and we're going to pot it up into this 10-inch cocoa-lined hanging basket. And then in probably 2, maybe 3 years, because these guys aren't fast growers, we'll pot it up again, and we'll probably go to something like a 12 or even a 14-inch. And we'll continue to let it grow. Or, because a staghorn is an epiphyte, you can allow it to just essentially create a ball, kind of like our large one has at this point. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about growing conditions for the staghorn. The staghorn is going to like a bright indirect light, so something like a bright shade, such as the cover here, or under a large tree canopy where it's going to get that filtered light. It can definitely handle a little bit of morning sun, but our afternoon sun here in Texas is definitely going to be too intense and cause a lot of burn on the foliage, so you do want to be cautious of that. Now, they are going to be cold sensitive because they are a tropical plant. They are going to want to be protected around that 40 degrees Fahrenheit mark. So anything below that, I would definitely suggest adding some protection. They can handle a little bit lower, but to be safe, it's best to protect them around that temperature. For protection, it's best to bring them indoors so that they don't get any of that cold air or moisture in the air. There's a couple of ways that you can pot up a staghorn fern. Because they're an epiphyte, they don't technically need a lot of soil. An epiphyte just basically refers to like an air plant. So something like an orchid or tillandsias are going to be in a similar family. So they don't need really a lot of soil. So we want to make sure that whatever we pot it in, if we're going to do a hanging basket like this, doesn't give it too much soil. So this 10-inch size here is going to be perfect for this guy. Now you can also do cool things like mounting them on a piece of wood. I'll show some examples on the screen here, and you can get really creative on different types of mountings or materials you mount them on. When potting your staghorn, it's going to definitely depend on the method that you're using, but we're going to talk mostly about using a hanging basket today. So in our case, the soil that we're going to be using here is going to be a pretty heavy mix of potting soil, and then we've also used our leca balls for oxygen, some chunky perlite, and then we do have our cocoa core mixed in here as well, because that cocoa core is going to help retain some moisture without being too heavy in the soil. Now, because they are an epiphyte, they are going to get most of their nutrients out of the soil. That's going to be kind of those gray hairs that you see on most epiphytes. It's most obvious on tillandsias, those little gray hairs, but as the staghorn fern matures, you'll notice some more on the foliage of these guys as well. A staghorn fern is going to create kind of a cup-like shape as it matures, and that's really where it's going to capture a lot of its water. So it holds it in there, and then it distributes it to its root system. So in our soil, we don't want it to be too heavy, so we don't have a ton of compost in our soil today, but I did mix in some of my favorite from Microlife, which is the humates, which is kind of like a concentrated compost for your soil. So I have mixed some of that in here just to get it started and get it rooted. Now, to start potting, we're going to make sure that our chain is in correct order here, and it's not all kind of twisted or tied up at the top. And then I'm going to just split down 2 and fold it to the side so that we've got easy access to our basket here. I'm going to put a little bit of soil at the base to make sure that we're at the right height in our pot for when we finish our potting. Our goal is going to be that the existing soil level in our grow pot is going to be ending at the same soil level in our container here, so we don't kind of choke out or cause some rot at the base of the plant. Now I'm going to kind of shuffle this to the side to kind of build up the side walls as I'm doing my filling here. Give a gentle squeeze around our grow pot to loosen up those roots so we don't cause any damage getting it out. And then I'm going to kind of hold everything in my hand, kind of like a ponytail, I guess, and then flip it over and give it a couple of taps, and she'll slide right out. Now I'm going to just lightly break up this soil because typically in a grow pot, our plants should be fairly root bound if they're well rooted, and so what we want to do is prevent any muscle memory from just kind of going in circles and causing girdling and all of that fun stuff. I'm going to really focus around the top edge of the soil because that's really when I want to make sure kind of mends well into the new soil once it's potted. So we can see our root ball is pretty well kind of scratched around the surface and loosened up. So now we're going to plop that guy in here. Make sure again that we're going to be at the right height, the finishing height. I'm going to mix some of that existing soil into my potting mix here. And then just start filling up around the edges. And notice that I'm kind of holding the top of the plant, but I'm not really squishing it. This is just going to help make sure it's upright and I don't lose being in center of my pot or anything of that nature. And once I'm almost to the top of that existing root ball, I'm going to just take 1 to 2 fingers and kind of lightly push in the soil. What I'm trying to do here is reduce any air pockets. And during your initial watering, the water is going to remove any oxygen or big pockets of air in your potting mix. And then what can happen is your soil will settle and your root ball will be exposed. And that'll cause a lot of issues in the long term. So what we want to do is just kind of remove any big pockets, but we're not trying to pack the soil in. So just a light tap, and then we'll finish top dressing up to the top of the root ball. Now, anytime I don't want my soil to be too compacted, I kind of tap around the edges like this. And what that'll do is it'll kind of help remove any other air pockets and such, but it'll also help level off the soil on the surface of the pot. And then, once that's done, we can gently bring our chain back around, folding any foliage where it needs to go. Making sure our chain's nice and square. And voila! Newly potted staghorn. So if you think a staghorn fern would be right for your space, you should check out miltonsplants.com. That's MILTONS plants.com, and then scoot over to rodneyandjake.com to check out more on our blog on a step-by-step process on how to pot up a staghorn. We've also had a few questions about Milton's Plants lately, and did you know that Milton's Plants is owned by Jake? Jake named it after his grandfather, who instilled all of his love for his tropical and subtropical plants. If you've not checked it out yet, definitely go check it out. Purchasing your plant babies from miltonsplants.com definitely helps support our channel. We'll see you guys next time.